This video goes so hard, I feel I need to have a disclaimer after I edited the video at the beginning. The views inside this video are based on satire from an alien species with blue hair, and they called themselves Karen. The history segments are completely factually correct. If you need to, you may look them up. We probably shouldn't be here. In fact, I shouldn't have to be sitting here in 2026 explaining basic history to people who clearly use their textbooks as coasters. But here we are, because the internet has decided that a wholesome game about a guy in a suit and a little girl in space is, wait for it, Nazi propaganda. Folded legs here. Before we get into the actual game, we need to address the absolute circus of idiocy surrounding this release. I am a massive history nerd, and seeing this generation of femcels and Twitter warriors toss around terms like Nazi for a sci-fi aesthetic is a special kind of brain rot. Listen up, you absolute clowns. Being a history nerd means I actually respect the weight of what people went through in the 40s. Comparing a futuristic, wholesome game to the actual atrocities of that era isn't just a reach, it's disrespectful as fuck to the millions of people who actually suffered. You aren't socially conscious, you're an ignorant idiot who needs to log off and read a goddamn book. Honestly, these people have a room temperature IQ and they're living in a freezer. If everything is propaganda, then my lunch is a political statement. Stop trying to look smart by misusing historical trauma for clicks on a video game thread. It makes you look like a total femcel loser who failed 9th grade social studies. Go sit in the children's corner and let the adults talk about the actual game. Section 1, the History for Dummies Roast Session. Before we even look at a single frame of gameplay, we have to talk about the terminally online circus currently performing on social media. If you are one of the people calling PRAGMATA Nazi propaganda, I need you to do something very brave. Go outside and touch the grass. Don't eat it though. I know your brain is currently running on the same processing power as a garden slug. Just feel it. Remind yourself that a world exists outside of your 280 character echo chamber. I'm a history nerd, which means I actually have a functioning relationship with reality. Real history tells us that the Nazis were actual systemic monsters who wiped out thousands of people a day in a campaign of pure horror. And then there's you, an absolute bottom-of-the-barrel idiot trying to compare that to a wholesome sci-fi game about a space dad taking care of a little android girl. What in the actual hell is going on in that hollow cavern you call a skull? Is there just a single DVD screensaver logo bouncing around in there? Where is the logic? I would ask where your father is so he could explain how embarrassing you're being. But we all know the truth. He went out for a Dallin of 2% 15 years ago and decided the milk aisle was a better life than raising a femcel who hates all men because she can't distinguish a robot child from 1940s fascism. Honestly, these people have a room temperature IQ and they're living in a walk-in freezer. They're so desperate to be victims of a video game that they're willing to spit on actual historical trauma just to get 5 likes from other brain-dead losers. It's not problematic, you're just illiterate. If you spent 5 minutes reading a goddamn book instead of writing manifestos about space Nazi conspiracies, you'd realize that your hot takes are actually just room temperature garbage. Get a hobby, get some sunlight, and maybe try to graduate from a 3rd grade reading level. Section 2, the Projector-in-Chief Award. Now, if you thought the history fails were a disaster, wait until you hear the ethical concerns these people are cooking up. Apparently, PRAGMATA is problematic because the little girl in the game isn't wearing shoes. I'm sorry, what? Have you ever actually met a child? They are basically tiny, shoeless savages who lose their socks every 3 seconds. I'm not a parent, but I am the absolute favorite, most badass relative to my nephews. We're tight, we play games together all the time, and I've made sure they know how legendary Iron Mouse is because she's a pioneer. I know exactly what a wholesome, protective family dynamic looks like because I live it. But you literal weirdos who sit in your dark ass rooms all day hunting for your next victim because your parents didn't hug you enough. You're looking at a child in a video game and calling it sexy because she's barefoot. You are the ones projecting. And don't give me that I had a rough childhood excuse. Look, my sperm donor, some could say my father, is a complete piece of shit. My actual dad? We didn't get along either. My family tree is basically a lightning rod for drama, but I didn't turn out like you freaks. I'm not perfect, but I still have enough of a soul to know that this is actually ridiculous. You're taking a totally innocent sci-fi character design and turning it into something disgusting because that's where your mind goes. You are so terminally online and starved for basic human affection that you've lost the ability to see a space parent dynamic without your brain sliding into the gutter. It's not the game that's the problem, it's the browser history you're praying the FBI never finds. These people are out here snitching on themselves in 4000 resolution. They see a kid without shoes and their first thought is sexualization. That is a self-burn so hot it's visible from space. You aren't a protector of children. You're a freak who needs to be banned from the local park. Go put on some shoes yourself, walk to the nearest therapist, and figure out why your brain is so warped that you can't enjoy a sci-fi story without making it weird. You're projecting so hard you could rent a drive-in theater on that massive forehead of yours. Section 3. The Self-Snitch Olympics. And let's address the elephant in the room, or should I say, the corn in the room. Apparently, the Reddit warriors are up in arms because they claim there's corn being made of this character. Now, let me be very clear so you weirdos don't try to twist my words. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. The internet is a dark, lawless pit. But what I am saying is that I have seen plenty of content about PRAGMATA, and I haven't seen a single piece of that disgusting garbage. Do you know what that means? It means it doesn't show up on my For You page. It means the vast majority of the community is here for the sci-fi, the world building, and the space parent vibes. If your feed is filled with corn of a child character, that is a 100% certified you problem. Maybe you should stop hunting for things like that just so you can have something to cry about on a subreddit. By coming out here and claiming the game is problematic because of a tiny, dark corner of the internet that you clearly have the treasure map to, you've just proved yourself wrong. You aren't protecting anyone. You're just revealing what your search history looks like when you think no one is watching. You're projecting your own basement dweller tendencies onto a wholesome game and then acting shocked when you find exactly what you were deep-sea diving for. It is the ultimate self-snitch. It's like walking into a sewer and complaining that it smells like shit. This game is bad because I found corn of it on page 47 of a deep web forum. Okay. And why were you on page 47, buddy? Why were you scrolling past the fan art and the gameplay trailers just to find the one thing that justifies your fake outrage? The rest of us are out here looking at the graphics, and you're doing a forensic investigation into the gutter. You're not a hero. You're just a tourist in the trash can. If you see corn everywhere you look, it's time to wipe the smut off your own glasses and realize the common denominator is you. Section 4. The Reality Check. Final exam. Let's get into the actual history since some of you clearly skipped every class that didn't involve a TikTok trend. You love throwing around the word Nazi and fascist to describe a video game, but do you actually know what real human atrocities look like? Do you know why we know the human body is roughly 60% water? It's not because the scientist had a hunch. It's because the Japanese military allies of those Nazis you love to mention decided to easy bake oven people until they were literally dried out just so they could weigh them again. That is the level of depravity you're trivializing when you call a wholesome sci-fi game propaganda. Open a goddamn textbook and look up the actual atrocities before you use those words to get clicks. And while we're on the subject of things you don't understand, stop trying to gatekeep how people should feel or act. I grew up in the hood. I'm a white person, but I live that life. I've had friends tell me I could use certain versions of words you'd have a heart attack over, but I don't because I respect the weight of it. You people act like gatekeeping and being outraged on behalf of others is going to get you invited to the cookout. Let me tell you the truth. You aren't invited. You will never be invited. You represent a tiny, loud, terminally online minority. Most people in the real world don't think like you. I have a close friend in the LGBT community who I respect the hell out of because she's a real person, not a walking political manifesto. She doesn't shove anything down my throat. There are groups out there, and I'm not naming names, but we all know who they are, run by corrupt people who claim to care, while they pocket your donation money and laugh all the way to the bank. Just because you feel a certain way in your echo chamber doesn't make it reality. Actually understand the history and the world around you before you open your mouth and make yourself look like a complete idiot. It's the savior complex for me. These people think they're fighting a war for justice, but they're really just fighting their own shadows on a subreddit. You aren't virtuous for calling a game problematic. You're just showing everyone that you have no perspective on actual human suffering or how real people interact. If your only hobby is finding things to be offended by, you haven't lived enough of a life to be lecturing anyone. Class dismissed. Go read a book. The outro. Class is dismissed. Look, before I roll out, I'm hitting you with a few final reality checks because clearly the education system failed a lot of you. You like to act high and dry, but most of you don't even know where the nuclear bomb came from. What made us start looking into them? Who were the engineers involved? It was Nazi German research that kickstarted that race. I'll leave it at that. And why did we use them? It was a brutal choice made to prevent millions of people from dying in a full-scale invasion. Have you ever heard the term sacrifice a few to save the many? That is essentially the cold, hard history of what happened. Is it right? Is it wrong? I'm not the judge, but it is what happened. My point is that half of you idolize German military aesthetics with one breath, then scream Nazi at a video game with the other. Even the German people don't do that crap. They show the history for a reason. Read a goddamn book. Use some paper. I know your brains are so rotted you think Google has all the answers, but who do you think runs Google? The same rich people you claim you want to burn. Do you see how backwards and hypocritical you sound? I'm not just trying to make you feel stupid. I'm trying to make you realize that almost everything you're saying is factually wrong in every single way. I really hope this helped clear the fog in those hollow skulls of yours. Anyways, guys, the channel has been absolutely exploding lately, and I cannot thank you enough for the support. If you actually sat through this and learned something, say propaganda in the comments below so I know who the real ones are. I'm Folded Legs, and I'm rolling out.